Let me start out by pointing out that I'm not the only father of the internet. Bob Kahn and I, Robert Kahn and I, did the original design work for the internet in 1973, probably before many of you were even born. But what is also important is that we were able to build on top of the work of other people in previous networks, like the Defense Department, American Defense Department. ARPANET, the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, was an experiment in packet switching, which was very successful. And we took that success and then tried to extend it to allow an arbitrarily large number of networks to be interconnected in a uniform way. There's a secret here, which I think you should understand about the success of the internet. What you see today is clearly not what Bob and I built 50 or 40 years ago. But it is a consequence of its flexibility. The architecture was extremely open, deliberately open, so that new protocols and new communication technology could be brought into the internet without very much difficulty. That was a very deliberate design move on our part because we knew that new technology would come along and we wanted it to become part of the internet. We knew that there would be applications that we couldn't predict. And so we wanted a very flexible architecture that would allow new kinds of protocols to be designed by people who had new applications in mind. So we created a very layered structure. We allowed new protocols to be built whenever needed. We invited anyone with a good idea to join us. We said to the people who were reading our papers, if you can build a system that behaves this way, and if you can find someone to connect to, you should be able to interwork, and you should be able to grow the system. So we were hoping that it would grow in what I would call an organic way. We didn't dictate the business models for each of the networks that are part of the internet. We said, we don't care whether it's a for-profit network, a not-for-profit network, a university network, a government-run network. We didn't care what the business model was. We only cared about the technical ability of the networks to interconnect. The consequence of our decision not to dictate anything about the business model meant that any business model that worked was acceptable. And you find in the internet today all kinds of different business models. You find municipal networks. You find collaborative and cooperative networks. You find for-profits, not-for-profits, government-operated. And so this under-specification, so we didn't over-specify the system. This under-specification gave us enormous flexibility. So the result of all this is that the good ideas that other people had landed on fertile ground in the internet. And so it has continued to evolve over time. Remember that Tim Berners-Lee's work on the World Wide Web doesn't come until about 1991. And frankly, nobody noticed when he turned it on in December of 91, except for two guys at the National Center for Supercomputer Applications, Mark Andreessen and Eric Bina. And they developed the Mosaic browser, first graphical user interface browser, which everybody got excited about. And they started Netscape Communications, which went public in 1995. The stock went through the roof. And the dot boom was on. Everyone was throwing money at anything that looked like internet. And then in April of 2000, that all came crashing down. But the internet continued to grow. And the venture capital people learned a lesson. And that was, don't invest in somebody unless you have some idea about how they're going to make money. And so that's a lesson for every one of you as you're thinking about your business. Don't get too focused on just the technology make sure you have some idea of how you're going to sustain the business by generating revenue. The reason there was what we call the dot bust, that's the big crash in April of 2000, is because a lot of entrepreneurs didn't understand the difference between capital and revenue. Revenue is supposed to keep going. Capital is finite and you run out of it. And some of those CEOs were spending their capital as if it were revenue and they ran out and their companies failed. So that's economics 101. Don't confuse capital for revenue. Economics 102. Don't spend more money than you have. It's a good way of going out of business. So these are some of the elements of the Internet's architecture which have allowed it to continue to evolve with new applications coming. You mentioned in your opening remark the Internet of Things. These are devices that are programmable and that have the ability to communicate. And there will be literally tens of billions of those entering into the marketplace. We will have them in our homes, in our offices, in automobiles. We'll be wearing them. They may even be inside of us. That's a whole new wave of technology. It's a big opportunity, but it's also, let me say, let me use the word risk, big risk. Let me try to explain why Internet of Things is a potentially big risk. The first point is that too many people think that all you have to have is a mobile with an app and some internet connectivity, and then the device with its software, and that's it. It's a very simple notion, an app controlling a device. The problem is scaling. If you have only one device and one app, and the internet links the two, that's pretty easy. What if you have 100 devices? What if you had 100 different apps to control 100 different devices? Can you imagine walking into your house with your mobile, flipping through 100 different apps to figure out how to turn the lights off and on, or how to get in through the door, or how to get the refrigerator to open up? Scaling is a big issue. Interoperability among all the devices is a big problem. Think about how you interact with those devices. If you have, look at how many lights we have in the ceiling here. What would happen if we wanted to turn individual lights off and on? Do you have to have a different app for each light? If you're going to use a spoken interface, do you have to give names to the lights, like John and Frank and Edward? Turn Frank on and turn Edward on. What happens if you have a guest who comes to your house? How do you introduce the house to them? How do they know how to turn the lights off and on? And then when they leave, how do you tell the house not to obey them anymore? You don't want them doing things to your house while they're remote. What if you're a parent and you have children and you don't want the children to have the same authority over these devices that you have as the parent? Because you and I both know the reality of this is that the children probably know more about how to control the house than the parents do. But I give you these examples to try to show you how complex this Internet of Things idea really is and how hard it will be to do a good job to build a business. One last point. Every single one of you who has anything to do with software knows that it's almost impossible to write software that doesn't have a bug. I know, because I used to write software and I have a little dent in my forehead. I'm going like this whenever I found the stupid mistakes that I made. So the reason this is relevant to the Internet of Things is that some people will take these devices into their homes or their offices, and they will be there for quite a long time. It could be years, maybe even decades. And that means that someone is going to have to maintain the software in those devices and fix the bugs. Now, I suppose you could say, I won't do that. You know, too bad, you bought my device, it has a bug in it, I'm not going to fix it. You will have angry customers if the devices don't work correctly, or worse, if they cause harm, if they become unsafe because of the bugs. So thinking about long-term maintenance and the ability to reload the software is really important. More important, the device, when it's downloading new software, has to be pretty confident it's coming from the right place, that it's not a hacker who's trying to load malware on your device. You want to make sure that the software hasn't been altered on its way from the source into the device, which means digital signatures are going to be important. These are all part of the ecosystem of a successful environment for Internet of Things. So if you're approaching that market, you need to keep many of these things in mind. I realize I went on and on and on, and that was not your intent, but I'm happy to answer a different question now.
Actually, it's very impressed to me because